Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say hello and welcome. Welcome to a fresh, brand new edition of the program ASHFORD GARLEY Live on British Radio Africa. It feels great to be back home. And of course, as always, we just want to give the man above the praise. We want to say a big thank you to him. Finally, we're grateful to you. We want to say thanks for what you've done and continue to do. And we also want to magnify you, man. In the name of Jesus, we give you thanks. Well, Basilio Blue. C'est qu'on lui a appelé. Grâce to Bayeke, Zebaglo, no, he doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than a lion. The mastermind, the doctor of law, Africa's media, do extraordinary. As for the giant, and now you know me, Garley. Welcome to the show. Mr. Raymond Clark is watching. How you doing, Raymond? It's been a minute, bro. Prince Sluggan is also watching. How are you? Well, gentlemen, how you all doing tonight? Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Greetings to all of you wonderful panelists, Liberians, the Lodge. It's such a joy and a pleasure once more to be in this great company of panelists and dedicated Liberians watching us tonight. Thank you. Glad to be on.
Dr. Fisk, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Ashford, and greetings to my fellow panelists. Greetings to the viewing and listening public out there. I hope we can all sit together and have another explosive episode of ASHFORD GARLEY Live on British Radio. Thank you.
Coach Q, welcome to the show, bro.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for welcoming me. Hello to all the guys on. Hello to all the people watching. Just looking forward to having another discussion about our beautiful country and the future of our children. Thanks for having me.
Mrs. Letty Brooks Roberts.
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bridge Radio Africa. This is Letty Brooks Roberts. Happy Monday. Hope you had a wonderful weekend.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present just a second edition of Bridge editorial commentary. This program is aired every Monday at the top of your hour. And just 2 minutes, the presenter will be using to perform critical research analysis of what it is the most of the region for. It is presented in no order. Dr. Fisk, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Ashford, and greetings to our listening, viewing public once more. So today's commentary is titled "The Role of Government in Public Sector Job Creation." As Liberia enters another season of presidential elections, a major question that has not been addressed but affects the majority of voters is job creation. One school of thought argues for government to play a hands-off role, while the other argues for its active involvement. The position of this paper is that public sector job creation should be the number one responsibility of any government. To be sure, the government is already successful in the business of public sector job creation. Minus civil servants, the military and paramilitary employments are also public sector jobs. Therefore, the argument that government should only create the enabling environment also advocates the dissolution of national security. According to Roderick and Stancheva, government can either be a direct employer or indirectly when it spends on the creation of roads and highways. Those who argue for a hands-off rule believe limiting government reduces taxes and the amount it will need to spend for national development. But can the government run without taxes and spending? Furthermore, markets are not self-creating. Markets are not self-regulating. Markets are not self-stabilizing. Neither are markets self-legitimizing. Such risk factors are checked through non-market institutions to maintain the functionality of market economies. These non-market institutions are embedded in government. In most Latin American countries, there is consensus that government, rather than the private sector, should play a primary role in job creation. Internationally, this is a trending view. As late as 2011, most European countries ensured that over 15% of their total jobs was in the public sector, with Denmark having the highest rate of over 35%. In the US, public sector job employment gained notoriety during the Great Depression when unemployment was as high as 25%. Policy steps by Franklin Roosevelt to ensure public sector employment included the creation of the Federal Emergency Relief Act, FERA, and the Civil Works Administration, CWA. Both joined and eventually they both merged into the Works Progress Administration, that's the WPA. The WPA employed up to 8 million US residents over an 8-year period. That's in the public sector. The current Biden-Harris agenda is to restore the public sector as a partner in long-run growth. The global trend is public sector job creation. Therefore, our political leaders need not be so coy on the issue, especially in an age in which technology is present everywhere for purchase. In the case of Liberia, I have argued for the extension of public sector job creation into agriculture with the creation of agro-industries. For example, Liberia has a rice market of over 2 million buyers. Is there a logical economic reason why no government has declared a monopoly in the interest of securing jobs for Liberians? Why are we potentially losing up to $500 million annually towards the development of the Indian and Chinese economies through the importation of rice? Why? This is the case because, without any basis in evidence, our leaders have wrongly assumed that public sector job creation is not the business of government. Interestingly, the current government is already heavily invested in public sector security job creation. I thank you.
Okay, that was this week's edition of the editorial commentary with Dr. James T. Fisk on the show tonight. And folks, let us begin the show by talking about a few things that we are going to be diving into tonight if time permits. Charles Taylor lost retirement benefit kids at Equus Court, and $27 million road fund collected was not remitted to the consolidated account, according to the Senate committee chair, Dr. Henrique Tupac. Henry Costa comments about Liberians' hypocrisy and how they get used by politicians. And Elizana Cummins is in the southeast. And folks, we have some clips here that we're going to be showing. Cummins is actually, in fact, getting traction since he announced his running mate. Uh, the Southeasterners received him. I mean, the whole heart to it, and he's doing what he has to do. And George Weah is in the news. The Ganta Sani Kwele and Yekepa role is finally connected. And I see the supporters of Mr. Weah are all rejoicing on Facebook, and Fancy Liberia are doing the same. Now the question now is that enough to give President Weah a second term? Let us begin with Charles Taylor Lucen in court asking for the retirement benefit. That was added when you want to begin with you. What says you?
Yes, the Liberian government, greetings once more. The Liberian government, Charles Taylor sued the government for not fulfilling their obligation to his retirement. And the lawyer that represented them, I believe, was Councillor T.C. Gu, who put forth a case, a robust case, saying that Mr. Taylor was dishonorably discharged from the assignment of his presidency and therefore did not deserve his retirement. So that's one of the issues that's trending and people are debating. Well, Mr. Taylor was a legitimately elected leader of the Republic of Liberia, but due to a crisis, the international community came together and negotiated a deal through which he left. So others are arguing that ECOWAS decision didn't seem so right. On the other hand, if the government is, excited about this decision of ECOWAS to not pay Mr. Taylor his retirement benefit, then one can only argue that the Liberian government should also restore Mr. Kabina Janet, who through their political manipulation removed him from power, but went to the ECOWAS court and asked them to reinstate him. Until now, they have not done so. So this is where we are in terms of the political, heat simmering in the country.
Dr. Fisk, Charles Taylor is asking for retirement benefits from the government of Liberia. What do you make of this?
Well, the thing is, you have to understand that Charles Taylor doesn't think much about Liberia and this government in the first place. Otherwise, he would not have overthrown Samuel Doe. It's the same Taylor who brought war over to a legitimate government. In other words, he didn't think the government was entitled to any constitutional rights and obligations. Okay, so what is good for the goose is also good for the gander, right? So he did not launched by executing a war that eventually led to the overthrow and execution of Samuel Doe. Then it takes away the possibility that Doe could have asked for a pension. And then, but after you've done it and you were brought to power in an election, as some would argue, was maybe both free and not fair because you have rebels all over the place, that it doesn't make sense that subsequently the same system that you think was not good and needed will only be under you. And even under you, it was even worse. You cannot now come back and say you want to enjoy the fruits of that same system. It doesn't make sense. Everything doesn't, political legitimacy or statutory legitimacy should not be the only standard by which activities are conducted. So if you brought the reasons for which certain things should be done, you will see that he doesn't deserve anything.
Well, Letty Brooks Roberts, your good friend Charles Taylor wants his retirement benefit from the Liberian government.
Really? Wait. I think it's a double-edged sword. Even though we had Doe, who as well was killed, his family still wanted his benefits. He served a time. While it's true his term was interrupted, but I think it's right since according to history, he wasn't he's not in jail based on Liberia's the trouble is in Liberia, then he's entitled to his benefits from Liberia. So
Okay.
yeah, I think he should be entitled to his benefits.
Well, Coach Q.
Yeah. So first of all, Dr. Fitz, very good rendition. What you editorial. I wish we have time to talk about that a little more in detail. But just
The current gone.
I know.
yeah. So just to go to the topic on the discussion, we're either a country of rule of law or we're not. Is there a constitutional statute that says if you overthrow the country or attempt to overthrow a country, here are the consequences? I do not believe there is one. So if we're going to go by the rule of law, then we're going by the rule of law. Then he's entitled if there isn't anything against it. Just as someone just said, I think it was the pastor who said, we're talking about Cabina Janet. If we can't have selective enforcement. We can't say, well, in one instant, well, because he did something really, really bad, so therefore he's not he's not entitled to what he's supposed to be entitled to constitutionally. And we don't have that. We don't have an authoritarian government. We have a constitutional democracy. So if we have a constitutional democracy, and our our dictator is the Constitution and rule of law, therefore, anyone who falls under those rules should get the same benefit, equal protection under the law. As much as I do not want to advocate for Charles Taylor or anyone of that matter, if we're going to enforce laws against Charles Taylor because of what he did to the country, then we should do the same thing with Prince Johnson. We should do the same thing with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, with all these people, bully all these people in government who took part in the war. If they're benefiting from Liberia, he also should benefit from Liberia. If what he's saying is not, if what he's saying is constitutional. If it was not constitutional, then however, he's not entitled. But because it's constitutional and those are benefits that he should get, I believe that they're wrong. The decision is wrong.
Well, Idatu's, Mrs. Roberts said Charles Taylor was not convicted based on the atrocities that he committed in Liberia, but because of next door Sierra Leone, something that Dr. Fisk disagrees with. I want you to come in and throw light on that, then we can go to Dr. Fisk.
Well, I mean, if we're looking at the rule of law, certainly Charles Taylor did not commit any crime in Liberia to be deprived of his retirement. But then again, we see the hypocrisy of things happening. Nancy Doe did sue in, I believe, 2018, and ECOWAS court awarded her $18 million based on human rights violation, and the fact that her husband had monies in certain areas. So I don't know if I'm seeing some type of hypocrisy on the part of ECOWAS that it will award Nancy Doe, through a legal victory, and then at the same time encourage nations to comply, and then also allow Kabina Janet to be awarded his legal victory. And yet the government is celebrating victory over Charles Taylor retirement. I mean, for some reason, I don't know if it's selective justice on the part of ECOWAS, that's something that needs to be done. Now, and that is why we also put the War and Economic Crimes Court that needs to come to Liberia to be able to adjudicate these matters so that we can have what you call transitional justice, either retributive justice or justice intended to foster reconciliation, peace among all peace-loving Liberians for the greater good of the country.
Well, Dr. Fisk, you still maintain that Charles Taylor's incarceration has something to do with Liberia. It's not just Sierra Leone.
No, the thing is, if you watch the trial, there's a genesis Charles Taylor has a genesis that's rooted in Liberia before he could go to Sierra Leone. All those things came up during the whole process of the proceedings. But then you have to consider whether there's another case that's coming up against him in the interest of the people of Liberia, because he did commit atrocities against the people of Liberia. So do we say that because he was officially convicted because of the crime he committed against the people of Sierra Leone, then is there a statute of limitation on going around raping and killing people? No, there's no statute of limitation. So I think it's also possible that even after he served his first term, he could go to another round of court to be investigated for the crime he committed against the people of Liberia. Now that could be the basis for even having the likes of Prince Johnson face a war crimes court. Because mind you, now if you say Prince Johnson is going to face a war crimes court, if the argument is that let's put Prince Johnson before a war crimes court, then what are you doing with Charles Taylor? Who created Prince Johnson? That was Charles Taylor. So if you want to bring Prince Johnson before a war crimes court, then Charles Taylor should also get prepared to face a war crimes court officially for the atrocities he created against the people of Liberia through the NPFL. Now, it doesn't make sense to me that we should only seek constitutional legitimacy in the things that we do. Okay, because when you look at things from a broader perspective, it's not only about constitutional political legitimacy, okay, the basis upon which people need to have psychological legitimacy. In other words, they should be able to win the hearts of the people. Okay, all those things are very important. Okay, now what Charles Taylor did was to come and get rid of a government in total disregard of the Constitution, prolong the war in total disregard of ECOWAS. But then when it comes to trying to get money, he come back to the same old institution that he had no regard for whatsoever. He come to the ECOWAS court. Then for him, that's when the court has legitimacy. So when you talk about double standard, that's another double standard too for him, because at that instance, it protects his interests, even after what he did to the people of Liberia. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me that.
But if you can render judgment for the wife of late President Doe and Coach Kabina Janin at the ECOWAS court, why don't you think Charles Taylor deserves to get his benefit?
These are different situations and different people. Okay. Samuel Doe had his own history when it comes to Liberia and the formation of he becoming president of the country. Okay. Charles Taylor has a different history. Okay. A different history that if you really examine very closely, led a complete decimation, almost a complete decimation of the republic as it is. Okay. And then even after he became president, I mean, at least Samuel Doe, there were things that Samuel Doe did that you could look at and say, okay, he was working in the interest of Liberian people. But Charles Taylor basically became president because of himself. Okay, and basically, clearly, he running the Bank of Liberia from his house. And then after all of that stuff, then we say, okay, well, let's give him another so many millions of dollars. I think the problem is now with ECOWAS and all of these people that are taking decisions for them to make. I think the problem is with ECOWAS having a standard. Okay, it's not with these people taking it. I think the people are taking Charles Taylor, Nancy Doe, and the rest of them are all taking advantage of the fact that there's a toothless institution and that has no standard. The president, the guy overthrowing Guinea became president. ECOWAS said, well, we'll not recognize you, but because this guy has longevity, they were forced to recognize him. You see, so there are a lot of things that don't make any sense.
Thank you. Letty Brooks Roberts.
Yeah, I know that the International Crimes Court, the ICC, convicted Charles Taylor. While it is true we know that he is responsible, he and others are responsible for the degradation of Liberia infrastructure and its people, but they didn't trial him for that. They didn't try him for that reason. So I am, unless I read more into the case for why they denied him, as stated earlier, constitutionally he served the country. He was elected as Samuel K. Doe was, and even though he too, was part of an overthrowing of government, so they have a parallel. Why wouldn't? What are the basis for which he's been denied? Again, if I can get more on that decision, then maybe I would have a different opinion. But for now, from what I'm hearing, I think it's unfair. You cannot be, you know, you can't have your cake and eat it. You cannot say, oh, we didn't charge him, so then it's a fraud that they did charge him for something against Liberia. And as someone said, for him, no, he is not my best friend. He's Howard's sweetheart, and maybe she should be advocating. Maybe she did advocate for him. It's ironic we're just talking about him and how he his lieutenant, or one of his lieutenants, Prince Johnson, stated that he had suitcases of money. Then we had Mr. What's
Sure.
Mr.
Alan?
Yes, Mr. Allen state that he had no money in other countries, but his legacy is the central bank. So he has money. He has things put away, but I know he's right to go for what's, legally his. Again, that's Liberia issue. We have a lot of unfinished things, and that's why we're in a predicament. We have to deal with issues. That we have a current president, um, retired president who is getting benefits, and they all served in that capacity. So I would be arguing for mine too.
Well, Idatu, Elvis just tracked a very important point. He said, could it be because he committed an atrocity in another ECOWAS country? Is that why they deny him his benefits? I know you wanted to inject something earlier, but you can go on.
Well, so the principal reason, according to Councillor Gu, as I listened to him, was the argument government put forth was very simple. Mr. Taylor did not stay to complete his term and therefore did not deserve the benefits of his retirement. But I just want to speak to Dr. Fick's logic. If it is the issue of you remove a government and therefore you don't deserve the benefits, then certainly nobody should be expecting any benefits for Samuel K. Doe. Certainly nobody should be expecting any benefits from Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, because they were all part of the ACDL that became NPFL in Liberia that took war to Liberia. But I bet when she retires, as she's retired, she's definitely going to get her benefits from government. So by that logic, then a lot of people will be disqualified from 1980 to now, because in one way, shape, or form, they all participated in the war, but at the same time happened to be representatives or senators and as president of the Republic of Liberia. So that was the judgment of ECOWAS. I think more needs to be done. I don't see how that judgment has anything to do with what happened in Liberia. That case was about Liberia. So to introduce another case that is not under the jurisdiction of the lawsuit, which is within Liberia, kind of violates the international principles of fairness and justice. So Kabina Janet, for example, did go to ECOWAS court, which Liberia is a part and a signatory to the ECOWAS agreement, noting that whatever decision is held there will be impacted or executed by host government. So that's how international relations work. So until they can restore Kabina Janet, I don't see why they wouldn't want to give Mr. Taylor his retirement benefits or Samuel K. Doe his retirement benefits on just the basis of reconciling the country.
Well, Coach Q, I'm sorry that I skipped you. Mistakenly skipped you. You can come in.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I agree with what Ms. Brooks said. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. We're either a country of rule of law or we're not. I guess ECOWAS is for all intended purposes, Africa is functioning as a federal system now. When I say federal system, we have different governments operating at one time, just as in the United States, where they have local government, state government, and national government. I guess ECOWAS is playing this presumptive Supreme Court role. And it goes back to what I said earlier. There's statute in the Constitution that says if you do not fulfill your full term as president and you get removed for whatever reason, you don't get your benefits. I do not believe there is such a clause. And if there isn't, he deserves it. We're either a country with the rule of law or we're not. We cannot arbitrarily pick and choose which law we're going to enforce and which we wouldn't. Again, I think it was, the pastor, Addy, who says ECOWAS is toothless because if they weren't, Kabina Janet would be back as the Supreme Court Justice. He's not. So the government of Liberia is again showing their illegitimacy by picking and choosing which ruling from ECOWAS they're going to enforce and which they're not. That tells you you're part of an illegitimate government. This is not how a country functions, people. When you start doing things like this, it affects your bottom line. It affects your economy because as an investor, they look to see the carry out of the rule of law. That's why we're a constitutional democracy. Therefore, if the Constitution says something is going to happen or not going to happen, we need to follow that. I am not here arguing for Charles Taylor. What I am arguing for is, as an independent republic, a constitutional democracy, we have to follow the rules that we set out as citizens. Or else, we can amend our Constitution and include those things. And maybe when I'm running, those would be some of my pillars on my platform, because we have a lot of things that we do need to pay attention to. And some of these things is the rule of law. What type of rules do we have? What type of rules are we going to follow? We cannot. I know I'm repeating myself, but I want to belabor this point. We cannot, in one instance, say we're going to follow that rule and we're not going to follow the other rule. That makes your country illegitimate. We're either going to follow the rules that we set out and we all agree to call the Constitution, or we're not. If it's not stipulated in the Constitution that if you overthrow a government, you are not entitled to benefits, then we have to give that man his money if we're going to be a country of a rule of law. It's really that simple to me.
Okay, now when we come back, Alexander Benedict Cummings is getting some serious traction in the Southeast. With less than 4 months to elections, could it be a game changer? Could Alexander Cummings face George Weah in the second round, or could Joseph Boyka face George Weah in the second round? Big question. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hems vocal Liberia number one vocal Liberia number one, right? Okay.
The phrase, a new sheriff is in town, does not only belong to law enforcement. How about the introduction of Liberia's premier vodka, a quality and customized liquor for all occasions? Try the flavor of your choice. Hems Vodka, Hems Honey, Hems Bitter, and Hems Original Vodka. Hems Vodka has no hangover. That's why they say Papa drink Mama happy. Hems Vodka is sold in all stores, shops, supermarkets, and entertainment centers in Liberia. For wholesale, contact Hems Vodka at 0777 001114, 0777 000-979. We can also be reached via social media on Facebook and IG at Hems Vodka or www.hensvodka.com. In the United States, please contact Hems North America Incorporated at 610-543-9289, 484-888-1622, 484-755-8411. Hems Vodka is approved by the U.S. federal government. Hems Vodka brings out the real man in you.
I tell you, in my boy, in my blood. Every time when I stay on the block, everybody knows.
That's right, folks. We're back, and of course, this is Ashford Garley Lies on Bridge Radio Africa. This program comes on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays on Bridge Radio Africa. You might just want to share the page, tell friends, relatives, and loved ones about Ashford Garley Lies on Bridge Radio Africa. What Cummings is in the Southeast. Uh, he started off in Maryland, and one of the things that he said that really touched man as a Liberian citizen was he had to go through the Ivory Coast to enter the Maryland. I believe the speaker did the same. In this day and age, why should we be going to other countries just to make a tour, the nationwide tour within our own country? And then later on, he stopped in a place called River G, and Cummings now that is saying doing the traditional thing in River G. But just before we bring in Coach, let us take a watch at some of the clips we saw on his tour.
Lift your eyes. Lord, protection in Jesus' mighty name. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, we thank you that you bring blessing for the in Jesus' mighty name.
I was by the pastor here, reminding Mr. Cummings that he should always look up to God for direction. And so the color notes are now being presented to the stranger. And so you see right there the elders.
Coach Q, there goes your man. Who could be the next president of Liberia? The people of the Southeast are happy with him. What are your thoughts?
The people of Liberia is happy with this man. Cummings' trajectory at this point, there are two people that comes to mind. Anyone who was try to look outside of Liberia, there's a trend here. Barack Obama, in August of the year before the election year, July of election year, Barack Obama was behind Hillary Clinton by about 24 points. 24 points. What happens is when people are hurting, the last thing they're looking at is who's running, and people who are not politically active are not paying attention. Once people start to pay attention, they start to listen. They are going to gravitate towards what serves them best. William Ruto, this is just last year. The president of Kenya. Anyone who paid attention to that election, he was behind to the summer. Until the summer, he was behind about 15 points. He caught fire. So what happens is politics is politics, especially democratic politics. When I say democratic politics, I'm talking about politics in which we convince people to support us. Mr. Cummings, as much as people were saying, well, people don't know him, that is true. But here's the thing. Once they get to know him, they like what he's saying. If you just look at what this man is saying, let's go back to what the doctor said earlier during the piece that he read and wrote. What he was saying was that he's arguing whether is it government's responsibility to build the country and build an economy, or is it something else? How much role, right? So if you look at the United States government or the English government, there is this thing called laissez-faire, where business people say, how much role should government play? This was a real debate. This is a humans debate, right? How much role should government play in the lives of people? When you look at countries that were developed, government plays a heavy hand in setting the foundation and creating the environment. Cummings is speaking to the needs and the hearts of people. When he talks about, I have to go through Guinea to come and visit my people, that is not how it should be. There are things that the government should do. that an individual cannot do or pay for. Roads, just way too much money to do roads. Hospitals, real hospitals that have really served the masses. Government has to do that. Educational institution, government has to do that. Electricity, government has to do that. So what Cummings is doing is he's driving this point home that the resources that we all share should go to creating this environment, creating this mercantilism where government assists business people to grow. The people are starting to pay attention. And because they're paying attention, they're starting to agree with him because it's true. It makes sense, right? The government does have a role to play, and Cummings is telling that not only does the government have a role, I'm going to take an active role in making sure that these things are done. I've seen it in other people's country. I know how to do it. And the people, you know what? Our people are starting to listen. They're starting to get to know what this man is really about. Last thing. When you talk to someone who's dishonest, if you're an honest person, you just know. You feel it. When you're talking to someone who's a crooked G person, you know, you feel it. So what people are now doing is spending that time with Mr. Cummings. Our elders are looking him in the eye. They're feeling him. They're seeing how he's delivering these words, and they're trusting him because they know he's being honest about what he's saying. I think that's what the gravitation is coming from.
Well, to the Cummings supporters, we have a Cash App on there. Every time your Cummings man comes to talk about Cummings, you make sure you show some love to the Cash App of Zelle and to the Unity Party supporters as well. The same goes to you. Idatus added, why don't you think Coach Q is right on the traction, the gains that Alexander Cummings is making now? Alexander Cummings started his tour right after the naming of his running mate in the Southeast. This is a man who is going from county to county in the Southeast, and he intends to do the entire 15 political subdivisions. Your vice standard bearer said, Omen Boycott, sit down at home. We will do the campaigning for you. When the voter themselves want to feel, they want to touch, they want to see the leader of the party. But your party chooses to say, you know what? Sit down home. Since you can't go to other places, we will campaign for you. How do you expect to turn things around?
Well, thank you. First of all, I certainly want to, I certainly appreciate what I'm seeing from Mr. Cummings, that the elections has started and he's soliciting and attempting to win the minds and hearts of the Liberian people. But let me correct the faulty mischaracterization of that statement. Our vice standard bearer was, in fact, telling the Liberian people that the Honorable Joseph Boyka is so popular that he doesn't even need to step out and campaign. They will win for him. But don't forget, in district number 6, he was there on Saturday, and there was a lack of capacity to hold, the amount of people that came to see the Honorable Joseph Boyka. So he is going out. He is visiting people. Don't forget, he was in Bassa. He was in other parts of the country. He is visiting. So that is something that is going to happen. But the crowd I saw today is clearly on all sides with respect to Mr. Boyka and Mr. Cummings. We mean demonstrable of the fact that the campaign is heating up to win the hearts and minds of the Liberian people. And this is what we want to see, a substantive discussion to win the people. And that is why Joseph Boyka is basically winning the hearts and minds of Liberians through a very simple phrase: think Liberia, love Liberia, and build Liberia. And the way he intends to do that is through his policy called ARREST. And ARREST simply means agro-industrial farming, so that Liberians can have and enjoy food security. He wants to build roads, and through that process, government is able to empower more people to work, especially our at-risk youth and young people. He wants to invest in education. No nation advances to the next level without a good human resource. So that is why in Liberia today, all of these jobs that we have coming in, people are bringing expatriates to do it because we are being drained by virtue of the war. So Mr. Boyka looks forward to investing heavily in that area. When you look at Liberia today, under this current government, we have very poor sanitation, the stench of feces all in the streets of Monrovia, dirt piling all over. That is not able to bring investors in. In fact, a European diplomat even criticized us as one of the dirtiest countries in the world. And that is why the Honorable Joseph Boyka is focusing on sanitation, because through sanitation, you have a healthy society. And that being said, a clean country will definitely attract investors through security and tourism. So investment are being looked forward in those particular areas that will span job growth and job creation in Liberia. And the fact remains very clear. We are at the juncture of winning the hearts and minds of Liberians, and we intend to do that by explaining our policies and plans, vision for the people. Who else can do it but a seasoned civil servant of unmatched service of over 35 years? Joseph Boyka.
Dr. James T. Fisk.
Yeah, before I address the Boyka thing, let me talk to the Cummings thing and then I'll go to the Boyka thing. Watching that video of Mr. Cummings was very hard with someone who has a trained eye as a communicator. Cummings was not connecting at all. Play that video again and look at his body language. It's one thing to be, you can be in the midst of people and not be present. That is what I saw. Okay. Issues are very important in an enlightened society. But for the society that Mr. Cummings found himself running campaign in, charisma is extremely important. And Mr. Cummings doesn't have charisma. This is my first time actually seeing a video of Cummings. He doesn't have charisma. The last time I saw anything pertaining to Cummings, he was in a hammock and people were toting him in a hammock. So if we want to get away from that picture, then of course, we need a picture of humility. Why should he allow the guy to come and serve him with the cola nut? Charisma. When George Weah went to the Southeast with this guy, what the lawyer name? What his name? The popular crew lawyer.
Kofa?
Yeah, Fonati Kofa. You saw George Weah and Kofa dancing? That's charisma. When Barack Obama went to the funeral, he went to, I think, a funeral, when those black people were killed in the church. What was the first thing Barack Obama did? Was to give a rendition. Okay, these are charismatic. These are moments that stick with people. So even if they forget all the plenty book you spoke, there's certain things that you will do in the midst that shows that you're with them. I didn't see that. Okay, I'm just speaking from a purely communication standpoint. I have a master's in communication. So from a purely communication standpoint, yeah, it was absent. Okay. So, he needs to work on it. When Charlene Brunson was elected, was picked, I said, this girl is going to transform this guy ticket. Because instinctively, it's just like the job I do. As a doctor and seeing patients, I see that and know exactly what's going to happen. You have an instinct after you've done the work for some time. As a communicator, I knew this girl was going to transform his whole, because the girl has charisma. Okay? And he needs to work on it. I'm saying it from a positive standpoint. He needs to work on his ability to demonstrate charisma. It's not only just about the messaging. The messaging is important, but if you wrap that message in sugar water and give it to the people, they will drink it down. Okay? Let's get to the Joseph Boyka thing. With all due respect to the pastor, the argument for Joseph Boyka is very hard, because Joseph Boyka was in this thing for 12 years. And to make it worse, Alexander Kuhn, because Kuhn was in the legislature that has been overpaying itself for the last 12 years plus. Okay, so then you finally, come back to the people and start to sound like Cyril Allen. Oh, Charles Taylor did this, and Charles Taylor didn't do anything in the interest of Liberian people. Pretend like to say we never knew what was happening for the time that Charles Taylor was there. It's the same thing. Long story short, George Weah, because of Dara Dillon, the election of Dara Dillon, and the fact that CDC people are going as independent candidates and the rest of it, it tell you that George Weah and the CDC, they are aware they can't win Montserrat because of Prince Johnson and Jeremiah Kuhn. They can't win Nimba because of Charlene Bronsky and this girl from Liberty Party. By the time Unity Party and ANC finish fighting over Grand Bassa, there will be nothing left for CDC. So Grand Bassa is out. If Grand Bassa is out, definitely River Says is out. And Cummings is now, trying to strengthen his hold on Maryland County. Okay, that's 6 counties I've already named. The most significant of all of them is Montserrat County. So there will definitely be a second round. Okay, what we need to ask ourselves now is how these political parties interact when there's a second round. Even though Mr. Cummings say that, oh, well, I will support Bwaka. But what if, the acrimony becomes so nasty between the two parties? Do we see a situation where you have some of the supporters giving their support to CDC or just not voting, whereby that could even end up making Weah a second-term president when in actual sense he needs to be nowhere near the presidency? So those are things we need to be cautious about. Sometimes it's good to plan way ahead. You don't wait until the incident is upon you and then that's when you say, okay, fine, let's get to the table to be able to fix the pieces. No. Okay. Now, as part of a contingency, both parties, that's the ANC and the Unity Party, they should be having some ambassadors, backdoor channel of communication, so that just in case, it's not even a just in case thing, it will be a second round, that they will be able to collaborate. And that is not what is happening. So, I leave it to the coach and the reverend to respond, but I think Mr. Cummings needs to work on his charisma. And I think when it comes to Bwaka, it's a hard sell for Liberian people.
Mrs. Letty Brooks Roberts, I'm pretty sure Coach Q will have something else to say. Mrs. Roberts, come in.
In all fairness, it was a great reception given to Mr. Cummings. I think the people loved having him, a son of the soil or of the region. They were happy. But in agreement with Dr. Fisk, I observed what you're talking about. But when I did observe that, I felt that it was the team. Whoever accompanied Mr. Cummings, I feel they were not as close to him. You see, yes, it's traditional, it's cultural and all that stuff, and it's all good. But when you're not used to it, you tend to cringe. Because when I saw the bowl that man was dipping the drink from, I'm a traditional girl, and I was like, I bet Mr. Cummings is like, can this thing have been prepped and put in a little, like a pitcher or something, and just pour it? I don't know this man hygiene. It's all optics, and it's all about how he has lived in the West, and now you come here, and while you want to be comfortable with your family, your friends, your people, but somebody didn't look comfortable, and I could see the discomfort on his face, and I felt I didn't see any lady on that delegation that I think could have made him comfortable. Not having his wife there, he needs some. That's something that somebody makes you comfortable. Something, and I felt it, I saw it, and I thought it. So for you to point it out, I agree, and because of the distance where they had to travel, both his standard bearer, his VP couldn't be with him. So they both couldn't be there where she would probably give him, or the wife would give him comfort. But there was some discomfort, and for me, looking from all the way here, I saw it's not just that he doesn't have charisma, but some of the optics or the things that were being done. I'm from that region, and my mother, my family, that's what they do. When someone comes, you give them a piece of cola and pepper. It's actually pepper. So I don't know you don't know how he receives pepper. Because most of you guys here in the West now, you don't tolerate pepper like you used to. So there's so many things for me that I felt for him. In all fairness, and of course the camera has to show him. So yeah, that's why you saw that part of him. But when he did speak, he was upbeat and made the best of the situation.
Well, I think community says in the paper and how he thinking some kind of way. So and maybe the paper was too strong for him.
So that look where you are. There's not readily available, bathrooms and all those kinds of things. So that's a lot of it. And I don't think if I was with him, I would not have him. I would have first abreast him of what is to be expected, and then maybe tell them, okay, we'll drop a little bit of salt for him if he doesn't tolerate pepper. But that pepper don't be no small, no.
Coach Q, what do you make of the communication expert?
Yeah, so this is really hard.
Hold on a minute, Q.
I'm sorry.
That Cummings is not connecting, and Mrs. Brooks Roberts, who has a very soft spot for Cummings, the entire ANCT is being objective here as a part of this on British Radio Africa. I mean, your guy seems out of touch. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, that was that is really hard to listen to for a couple of reasons. So I want to start with Dr. Fist. First of all, charisma. You said two things. I've seen Cummings. The last time I saw Cummings on video was Cummings in a hammock, and then today. That tells me you are out of touch because Cummings has over 1,000 public appearances on video. So you're choosing to pick and choose when you want to say you saw him. That is so disingenuous. And anyone watching, anyone who's listening will question what you just said. This is the second time you've seen Cummings was when he was in a hammock, and today when he was uncomfortable. Second thing, Cummings has said this. He's an introvert. That has zero to do with charisma. He's an introvert. I'm an introvert. I'm going to give you an example of that. When people are in a new environment, and you might not know this, and I'm a coach, I stand for my career, a student for hundreds of thousands of people over and over again. And if I could, I'll be in the box because I'm an introvert. That does not mean the person does not have charisma. When you spend time with Cummings, like those people have and did, you'll find that he has a very dry sense of humor, but he's funny. He's in tune. He's locked in with his people. And that's who he is. But he doesn't have this bubbly personality. Every person is different. He's admitted to that. Someone being an introvert doesn't mean they're not charismatic. So I don't see the connection there. Ms. Brooks, I'll give you an example of something that happened to me. When I went to Carey Street and went to the speak at the Intellectual Center, one of the traditions that they do is they give you this to tie you to drink, right? But you don't take it as a shot, but it comes in a shot glass. Me not knowing the tradition, right? When they put in the shot, I drank it as a shot and was not, and they all laugh like, what are you, like, that's not how you do it. And I didn't know. So what you were saying is when they brought him the cola and they brought him the pepper, if someone had told him there's pepper in there and he's anticipating drinking pepper, yes, it's going to affect how his anticipation. That speaks zero to his charisma. As a matter of fact, it speaks to his health concern. You don't know how he feels about pepper. Okay, so to say this is disqualifying, this person is not charismatic because they were uncomfortable in your ass. Dr. Fitz, you are not a body language expert. So when you try to speak from position of authority, I have a master's in communication, you're not a body language expert. Do not portray or put it out there as if you are, or you know something more about reading people's body language than others do because you study communication. That's not okay for you to do that. Mr. Cummings is very charismatic. The reason I can say that is because I've spent time with him and other people. So this is an anecdotal experience, and I've seen him, and I've sat in meetings with this man and how he interacted with people, and was in the presence of him meeting with other people, and he's not being phony. Mr. Cummings is going to be his best self. Just like someone commented a while ago, like, oh, what kind of series they want talking? I'm just going to talk. People who are not fake, they're just going to talk. This is really, when I talk to my family members, Miss Brooks have known me for a while, probably over 5 years now. She knows this how I speak. My family knows this how I talk. It's not trying to get some series. People need to be their best selves. And guess what? I'll close on this. The Liberian people see that. They see through that. So what you're reading as being non-charismatic, the Liberian people will see that this man's being his truest self. Being fake and fake bubbly and acting who you're not is part of the problem that we have in our government. People faking. I will say this. When I went to that, the last time I was there, spoke at this intellectual center, somebody actually mentioned that and said the way you're talking, you just being your regular self. We appreciated that. People come here and try to change how they talk, and you never did that. And we appreciate, and we see that. We see through that. So we appreciate you for that. So what I'm saying is authenticity matters. Let this man be his most authentic self. Am I saying he should be dreary and dry? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is what I saw today is authentic Mr. Cummings, and he's not being fake. And while he's sitting there, like you said, when he starts to speak, go watch. I'll ask everyone to go watch the video. When he starts to speak, he perks up because that's his moment. But while he's sitting now, you're reading him as being non-charismatic or detached from the people. That's not true. That will say that he's detached from his wife, because I've been in the room with him and her, and that's how he is. That's how he is all the time.
Can I respond?
30 seconds, then what do you got? Just
Okay. So when people are in a competition, okay, people who have won international beauty pageants and stuff like that, most of what you see they do, they have been trained to do because there's an outcome they are seeking. Okay. So Mr. Cummings could be introvert all he wants, but there's something he wants. So at the end of the day, no one is saying he should go around faking, but he needs to embrace that new reality. And that new reality calls for being charismatic. He did not demonstrate any charisma. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I may not be a body language expert, and it has nothing to do with communication, but in my current capacity, my ability to read someone's body language is a difference between making a decision to discharge them and they go outside and kill themselves or not. So yes, I may not have gone to a formal school to read body language, but my level of expertise requires that I understand your body language, because it helps me to determine your mental state. Okay, so long story short, it's up to him to embrace what he wants. He wants to be president, and with the culture milieu within which he functions, it requires that every instance he has an opportunity. The people embraced him, and he was there, but was he present? He wasn't. All I'm saying is that he needs to embrace what he wants. If he needs to be trained by people who understand how these things work, then he needs to be trained. It doesn't mean he's faking. It means he understands what he wants, and he embracing everything that is required to make him to win. That's what I'm saying.
10 seconds, please. Let me quick. 10 seconds. 10 seconds, please. So I can also, here's my rebuttal to that. I'm an educator. I stand in front of hundreds of people daily. and I've done it for a long time now. I disagree with and I do read body language too. Students, players, very important. I disagree with your assessment.
Thank you. Mr. Garley, can I just also interject that let's also be mindful this man has been on a trail, as stated in the beginning by you, unconventional travel trail, and he's going through not not a regular road. This is not Monrovia, which even is not as the roads are not as great either. But this here, some of the roads that he has to go through, and the regiment he had to go through, he probably is tired. It's a combination of things, and charisma is something someone just has. You can't turn it on or turn it off. As he stated, he's introverted. And again, for me, the gentleman that I think is his special guy, I don't know the title, Yekula's gentleman, he was sitting far from him. In these cases, and that may be a moment that something Coach Q you can also bring to your meetings. He needs to have people that he can smile with. You can strike a joke with, because you want to see him smiling and maybe not looking so uncomfortable. So I think that's just a matter of something can be fixed. He was in a place again where he had to eat and drink things that he didn't know where it's coming from, why it is traditional, but some of it look uncomfortable. So having someone by you and say, "My man, what want to bring you here?" That your drink, your laugh can just bring take away some of the little tension. So that's what I saw.
Idatus added.
Well, I know folks are going to find it a bit strange, but I think that video did not adequately represent Mr. Cummings. If you listen or watch the entire video, he was very sociable with the people, and there are tons and tons of pictures where in Maryland, he's quite frankly sociable with the people there. They went to see him, and we can criticize him because the people are performing a ceremony, and he's observing the ceremony that the traditional people are performing. So I don't think we can criticize him for that at all, because he couldn't jump in to interrupt the ceremony. So that video showed him sitting down and observing the ceremony. It doesn't mean that he wasn't connecting with the people in any way, shape, or form. So having said that, I think Liberia is at a very crucial juncture. We have a president who is charismatic but has failed us. So charisma is of non-issue to me right now. It's all about the message and the desire to redeem the Liberian people from this current circumstance that they find themselves in. And if anybody's looking for charisma, this is not your reality. Your reality is whether or not you want to change your life, given the leader that you elect, and not one who will excite you today for your vote, or buy your vote, buy a bag of rice, or share money, as opposed to listening carefully to someone who wants to change your life for better, because you deserve better. And the only person I can see that can do that is certainly the Honorable Joseph Boyka. So I wouldn't fault Mr. Cummings. There are several pictures on the internet, Dr. Fisk, where Mr. Cummings is, he's interacting with people, and he's in my opinion doing his best to connect. And this is what elections should be about: selling your message to win the hearts and minds of the Liberian people. Yes, one ought to be culturally sensitive and kind of understand the culture. And maybe that's one advantage Mr. Joseph Boyka has, having been in the country for all those years, and certainly can connect with the people in ways that are quite intimate. But, Mr. Cummings is a different personality. But that video that we just showed did not do justice, because I've seen pictures of Mr. Cummings interacting with the Liberian people, especially in Maryland and River G, where he's dancing, walking with them. Thank you.
What Mr. Added, let me circle back to Coach Q, because when you say what you just said, now the Cummings people are saying Cummings going to win the thing first round. If there's a second round, that will be the CPP and the CDC. So where are you coming from by saying Mr. Boyka is the only person that you see in this to do it? You can respond, then we'll go to a Q.
Well, the polls are very clear. The Liberian people named Mr. Boyka Rescue 1, and named his running mate Rescue 2. We saw how they turned out for him. We saw a recent visit in District Number 6, Monrovia, which in fact Montserrat County carries a substantial amount of the votes per the statistics. So we see that Mr. Boyka, these elections might probably be between Mr. Boyka and this defunct government called the Coalition for Democratic Change, whose only opportunity to win is by cheating, potentially, or better yet, step down from the presidency and let the competent people run for the deliverance of Liberia from these, bad policies of where Mr. Zoga Wilson stated today that the $13 million that they anticipated for the at-risk youth, he has yet to receive it. A multiplicity of failed policies and promises, thus impoverishing our people. And they can see the way clear where students aren't going to school like they ought to. You've given us tuition-free assistance, but they have yet to enjoy quality education, not to mention our healthcare. So it's clear that there is no legacy to be talked about with this CDC-led government, and Liberians are resolved to certainly select Rescue 1 through the democratic process.
Coach Q?
Yeah, so the Liberian people are certainly not resolved to pick Boycott to lead our country. Mr. Boycott still has a explaining to do about let's go back to 1983, the PL 480 loans. He still has to go back and explain what happened to the lottery fund that the commission was trying to investigate, and he refused to submit to Mr. Boycott. I can see why the Reverend wants to advocate against charisma and energy, because Mr. Boycott battery is very low. So we don't expect him. He doesn't even plan on respecting Liberian people enough to come out and tell them what he's going to do. He thinks that whatever he has done before is going to suffice, is good enough, and I applaud him for that. Please keep him home. The old man needs a rest, not whatever the acronym is. The Liberian people are listening to the next leader. The Liberian people are feeling the next leader. The Liberian people are asking themselves, in 12 years, Mr. Boycott has never advocated. Sorry, let's go back to since 1973. They couldn't show you one video clip of Mr. Boycott advocating for education or any newspaper article. Never spoken against rape. Never spoken against any atrocities facing our country. Okay, Mr. Boycott, to this day, is now saying, I'm not going to campaign. I don't know what legacy Dr. Addy is talking about, but Mr. Boycott has none. Mr. Boycott has not served in any capacity that actually left a legacy in Liberia for the Liberian people. Mr. Cummings humbly is going around to Liberian people telling them what he plans on doing based on his experience, based on the things he has done, based on his expertise. Mr. Cummings is availing himself to platforms like this, answering questions from regular Liberian people. We have yet to hear Mr. Boycott or see Mr. Boycott do the same thing. Make yourself available to Liberian people so we can ask our questions about loans that were missing, money that's missing, the lottery commission, what you did when you was head of youth and sports, what you did when you're head of agriculture, all those things, all the burning questions we have. You're not going to trick your way into being the president. All we are asking Mr. Boycott to do is make himself available so we can ask questions. Mr. Cummings is doing that. That's why the people are gravitating towards Mr. Cummings, because they get to feel him, touch him, see him. Mr. Boycott has yet to do that. So I don't know what Dr. Addy's the pastor is talking about, that Mr. Boycott, the people are resolved. The people are far from resolved from supporting Mr. Boycott.
Okay, I think Pastor Addy want to respond, and we go to Dr. Fisk.
Ashford, these elections are very crucial, and I'm doing my best not to make Mr. Cummings an object of political attacks. But I certainly will defend the legacy of the Honorable Joseph Boyka. There's a reason why people are advocating age, because with age comes wisdom and experience. It is clear what Mr. Cummings is doing now. Mr. Boyka has done and even doing more for the people of Liberia. Unmatched, dedicated civil service to the people of Liberia. The 1973 that he's talking about, between 1973 and 1980, he doesn't know that Liberia, especially Lofa County, was the breadbasket. When Joseph Boyka was then the regional director for that area. We had the Lofa project where rice was being grown, cocoa, coffee exported. Where you had the Bong project and the list of several other projects. Don't quote me, ask Mr. Cyril Allen. In his words to me, in fact, it was Joseph Boyka that first gave Liberians the right to import rice. In fact, he said, this is how my business started, and I became an insurance agent for the protection of Liberians who were importing rice under the Honorable Joseph Boyka. So let's talk history, my friend. Liberia under Joseph Boyka enjoyed some of the best years of agriculture, and that is why agriculture is his forte. He's not proposing theory. He's proposing things that he's been in the weeds, the nuts and bolts. He's done those things. And that is why it's the first on his list, food security, based on his expertise and experience in government. He has a background in business. You want to talk about charisma? People do love Joseph Boyka because of his integrity and the kind of man that he, that he is. He's been in government all these years. He hasn't stolen. The issue that you're talking about in 2018, that was addressed. He published the entire budgetary analysis of every sector that was under him, and he called for one Liberian, the government to go and audit him and prove where corruption. Until this date, that information is in the newspaper. Read Front Page Africa, the breakdown of the budget. As far as the Group of 77 and several other entities, they have not said anything. Let's go to the PL 480. When you read the audit conducted by USAID, $1.1 million after the coup in terms of the government funding were given to government organizations, $1.1 million. At that time, Joseph Boyka was not the manager of LPMC. $1.1 million was given by government. $16.4 million was giving out in credit sales to high-risk business people. $7.9 million of that money was uncollectible. When Joseph Boyka took over the agency of LPMC between 1980 to 1982, when you look at the audit, my friend, of the then John Compitello, the auditor of West Africa for USAID, in that audit report, he said the program was running better before 1982. In 1982, do you know who took over then? Aletha Johnson and Henson. They were running LPMC. When you look at the General Accounting Office report, when the 17 experts went to Liberia and before they could arrive in Liberia, you will quite frankly see that the then finance ministry got burnt. But when they settle in, they give a total breakdown in what they call the Economic Support Fund. $80 million of that fund under then Joseph Yuma Boyka was managed by agriculture. And you would see, quite frankly, from that report, page number 5, page number 40, page number 4, I send them to ASHFORD, where you will see in that report, the government of Liberia, under the $80 million ESF fund, paid every cent. They were behind schedule of $3.9 million to be paid. So go look at the report. I sent them to Mr. Garley, and one of these days we'll go through those reports and look at it. So this misrepresentation and mischaracterization of the Honorable Joseph Boyka has yet to stick. You guys have to come with something far better, because the report is public knowledge. It's on the internet.
Misrepresentation and mischaracterization. Want to go back to Dr. Fisk, then Letty Brooks Roberts, and then we'll ask for closing statement. Perhaps a Q will come in later on to respond. Dr. Fisk.
Yeah, I was listening to the coach, and he says that Cummings has availed himself to a number of platforms. Cummings is yet to avail himself to this platform. And you said that you talk to him all the time, you interact, you rub shoulders with him. So why don't you talk to him to come on this platform? What is he afraid of? I don't think he should be afraid. No, it's true. Because the last time I checked, when Cyril Allen was here, he had 16,000 people viewing the show afterwards, and active viewers are close to 2,000 people. So Cummings wants his message to go out. He can come on this platform. And the same message goes for Joseph Boyka or maybe Alexander Kuhn. Okay. And it's not as if, and this station is not a station that's bought, right? So nobody can tell you that we're affiliated with ANC or we're affiliated with UPP or we're affiliated with any, we're not affiliated with any of these things. And the fact that none of these political actors want to face the hard questions. For me, Cummings is a corporate guy. So I want to ask Cummings a lot of questions about job creation. You say he has a fine platform. Let's let him come so we'll talk about it. Okay, that hasn't happened yet. But he's been going other places. The same thing with Charlene. Okay, so what is the fear? So, and then let me go back to his appearance in Maryland County. The people embraced him. Okay, but did he allow himself to be immersed into what was happening? I did not see that. And I can tell you, after you've given all of the beautiful messages and everything, especially to relatively speaking illiterate population, sometimes the only thing that stick is something crazy that you do. Okay. And what was that moment that Cummings left with those people? Okay, so after all of everything that had been said, look at this Kiss Daniel, Buga. George Weah made his mark with that. It's just like George, if people, charisma don't put food on the table. But then Cummings followed with Buga, and even when he followed, I mean, he all in Kosu and dancing in the, not connecting. Okay, so these are the moments that we're talking about. The only thing with the CDC is that these guys they're incompetent. But the charisma of George Weah is there. I mean, it's clear. The other time he was talking to the people and started rapping. These are moments people remember. That there's some stuff, awkward stuff that you do. This charisma, it sells you. Okay, Cummings doesn't have it. And he needs to work on it if he wants to be president, because that's part of the package. It's not about his character. If you want to do something, sometimes you have to go beyond your character. It doesn't mean to say that you're faking anything. It just means to say that you're learning something new because of what you want to achieve. At the end of the day, you can have all the beautiful plans. If you don't become president, none of those things will get accomplished. So you need to use whatever tool that's available to get you to get what you want. And he's not thinking in that direction. As far as Mr. Boyka is concerned, okay, once upon a time when Ellen was president and she had to make all of these UN reports, if you just saw those reports, you would think that Liberia was the Mecca of West Africa because these people can articulate on paper. But what was the reality of the ordinary Liberians? That was reflected in the vote of George Weah because there was widespread despondence because Ellen government was a failure, relatively speaking.
Thank you, Doc.
Yeah, so you can come with all of these beautiful enumerations about what Joseph Boyka had been doing, the rest of it. The most important thing that speaks to his legacy and wanting to be president is the fact that he's been there for 12 years. And Mr. Kuhn was in the legislature for 12 years, that embezzled, that hid behind statutory laws to steal from the Liberian people. For 12 years, Kuhn was there. For 12 years, Joseph Boyka was there, reaping salary. The same way how Joe Howard Taylor is taking millions of dollars. It's the same way how Boyka, according to CDC, took 30 million in his capacity as vice president. And that was, all of these things were not right in the interest of Liberian people.
Thank you, Doc.
He said nothing about it. You can't come back now and say, oh, well, the CDC is bad and we're coming to fix it. It doesn't make any sense.
Mrs. Letty Brooks Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Garley. Thank you to all of you. Dr. Fisk took the words right out of my mouth. Why it is true, or some of these things about I want to call him Omen Burkhardt, VP Burkhardt, whatever, his proper title, former vice president. He those are all good, but he's vying for a position with a new, younger generation, who some of them don't even have access to the last 15 years. Let's give it 12. So let's work on his current um plate where he just served from. That's the record we want. If you Pastor Addy, I'll put it to you, in your current role, someone knows you're the greatest of at this, in that when they seek your for you to be in a position, they want you to bring to that to the table what you're good at or what you have experience in. What has he done for the past 12 years? Liberia has the same rice crisis that it's had since the 80s. So if he was the man in charge of the bread basket and all of the 12 fish and 5 loaves, why come he hasn't brought that to this 21st century generation who are yearning for something different, not just based on history. And we have a situation right now where his one of his the people in the MDR who his VP worked with is going with a religious war and threatening people. What has he said? And the same question may go to Cummins, but I'll give Mr. Cummins a pass because right now he's on a campaign trail. He still has the right to speak on it. What are they saying? We don't want people who don't speak to us, and we'll get back into the same situation where we are now, where we don't hear from our president. When you're in the in the league and you are the one opposing someone, you want to knock down things that are in the way to let the people know I'm here for you guys. When does he do that? So all these
Well,
things we're reading about Mr. Boycott, we don't see it coming out in dividends. We still have allegations of his VP with all of these shady characteristics. So let's talk about what he brings to the table and what he will do or what he has done since he's been VP. If we're going to talk about Ellen's government, he served a full term, not half. And I'm sure he's also one of the recipients of his retirement. And I suggest he should enjoy it.
Like,
thank you.
I will go to what's this? I think Q.
Yeah, it's
Right?
probably my turn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Q.
Pastor Addy, you cannot
Q go.
you
Okay,
cannot
Q.
monopolize the
I want you to
conversation
respond, and then
because
you can just add your closing statement because we're about out of time now.
okay, yeah. So and that
Close up, man.
okay. So here's what I would say, Pastor Addy, you need to stop. The report, the GLA report, the official audit from the U.S. Congress says that a lot of money was embezzled between 1980 and 1985. You're a man. Mr. Boycott was serving. He took on an additional title from LPMC to be managing director to be agriculture minister. There is no way. And when you keep saying to people, the reports are there, yes. I ask the listening audience to please reach out to Bridge TV. The report is there. We will share the report with you. Money was embezzled, just like $30 million during the 12 years of Mr. Boycott's service in the Ellen government cannot be accounted for. These people have all these nice words and bread basket. Bread basket where, sir? If Mr. Boycott is such an expert in agriculture, why do you have to Photoshop him on the farm? There should be millions of pictures. I can't come out here and say I'm a coach and you can't find one picture of me since 1982 on the football field or in that capacity. This man is supposed to be all about agriculture. You guys had to Photoshop him on the farm. And you claim that he owns a piece of land that people come and do subsistence farming to. When has he visited? And how has that helped Liberia? Let's be real about what we're talking about here. You using Sarah Allen, that's your proof that Mr. Boycott was doing the job of the Liberian people. He should have a real legacy at this time. Not waiting for Sarah Allen, who said he didn't even read the report. about the GOA report to say that Mr. Boyka was doing a good job. We talking about the U.S. government did an audit and say money was embezzled. Because of that embezzlement, Mr. Boyka was fired. Lastly, we're talking about charisma. I'm not going to go back and forth about this charisma. I know Mr. Cummings has charisma. I know there could be a lot of factors for whatever you saw. You're not a body language expert. You cannot say he's not connecting to people because he's connecting quite well. Other panelists have said the same thing. So that's your opinion. You have a right to it. That's why we live in a country where people are allowed to express themselves. But you're wrong about that. Mr. Cummings does have charisma. He is connecting to our people, and our people are gravitating towards him. In closing, I appreciate this conversation. Hopefully, we continue to have a conversation about our country and the substance of what's going on in the country, not just things on the surface. The substance. Mr. Cummings plans to use American intelligence. He's gone into detail how he's going to make Liberia food security is going to be his first priority. And he's laid out a complete plan on how to do that. Mr. Cummings understands how to create low-skilled jobs. When we talk about job creation and the purpose of government, anyone who is studying any government, especially when Dr. Fitz was talking about during the Great Depression, yes, that's what the United States government did. And this is how they got out of the Great Depression. You create jobs. You create jobs. Even now in the United States, all these constructions you see on the highway, the reason why you never see them ever ending, because those are job creation programs. The government has to set the environment for jobs to be created. Mr. Cummings understands economy, global economy, and how to go about doing this. There is no doubt that he's the best person to do this job. I hope and pray that Dr. Addy and the rest of the Joseph Boycott people will one day allow Mr. Cummings and Mr. Boycott to sit on the table, since you believe that he has such a huge advantage of Mr. Cummings. He's so seasoned in government, and he knows how to create jobs and fight corruption.
Thank you.
Put him on the table so they can debate and let the Liberian people decide who has a better grasp of how to build a country and how to grow an economy. I will put out there that Mr. Cummings will run away with that debate, and it won't be even close. But thank you, and that's my closing for tonight.
Okay, that is to respond and then give us his closing statement. Now,
Madam Letty Brooks, it is quite interesting that you're asking for legacy when we had a 15-year civil war. It's as equal to you asking for us to point to some of Tolba's legacy, but in fact, our generation has nothing to show for it because we had 15 years of civil war. It is also disingenuous, in the words of President Ronald Reagan, when he said to his opponent, "I will not exploit your youthfulness and inexperience." So, Coach Q, the fact that you haven't gone back to read on the history becomes difficult. But let me reference you to the audit from the General Accounting that you guys are mischaracterizing and trying to align Mr. Boyka with corruption. This is what the audit findings found in your General Accounting audit that is also consistent with the USA audit. Listen, Liberian people, for your hearing so that this matter can be put to rest. Read pages 3, 4, 5, and 30, 40. Let me read the findings for you. And that will be my closing statement. With regard to the difficulties of the accounting for the reporting on over 15 million in counterpart funds in the early 1980s, we would like to state that we believe the entire amount of the economic support counter funds generated since fiscal year 1980 and 1984, a total of 18 million has in fact been accounted for. The General Accounting is correct in the AID. And in fact, the GAO is correct that the AID and the government of Liberia had a great deal of difficulty in tracking ESF funding. Recognizing these problems and moving to do something about them long before the GAO audit, the Schedule AID and the government of Liberia undertook a painstaking series of reviews of project revenues and expenditure. By mid-1985, $80 million in counterpart funding has been reconciled and was attributed to the government of Liberia disbursement to 139 development projects. We request that the that the General Accounting Report note these actions. You can make these things up because the facts are clear. You can lie your way out to the presidency because you want to mischaracterize the personality. Liberians go and read the report. It's public knowledge. Politics is one thing, but politically mischaracterizing your opponent because you want the presidency, I can imagine how many lies you guys will have to tell us because you want to discredit the Honorable Joseph Boyka. I want to also reference you to the auditor's report under the GAO accounting. They stated Agricultural Bank even demonstrated such transparency to the point where when checks were written or canceled, they have knowledge of it. You can make this thing up. The report is public knowledge, brother. I sent them to Ashford for his review. I copied excerpts for him to review them. And I certainly hope that one of these days we'll have this debate where we can look at this report that I just read you. Pages 4, 5, 30, 40. The report is clear. You guys want to mix stuff up. Fiscal year 1980 through 84. 1980 to 84. They were able to give you a reporting. It's in the report. You can shake your heads. You can accuse him of embezzlement. That is not the fact. And I apologize for the inexperience and youthfulness because you've chosen not to go and read. I read about Mr. Cummings because I need to know who he is. And I don't want to make up stuff concerning him. Liberians, these elections are not about charisma. It's about your future. Patriotism above individualism, tribalism. Nationalism above tribalism. Make a decision that will rescue our country, not a decision that is geared towards manipulating you through a bag of rice by this government that has printed $48 billion and has yet to remove the banknotes from on the market. I want to encourage you. Your decisions will be right when you think Liberia built Liberia and love Liberia through the vision of the honorable statesman, committed, dedicated civil servant, Joseph Yuman Boyka. Thank you.
Dr. James T. Fisk.
You can't let him do that, though.
Dr. James T. Fisk.
That was not GOA.
No. No, you can't do that. We all did our closing push.
Listen.
We all did our closing.
Don't do that. Our closing. Q. Okay. Dr. Fisk. Come on, Dr. Fisk. Let me go to Dr. Fisk now.
Yeah, in closing, I would say this. There have been times when I sat across from patients and they will be like, oh, I have this. I'm feeling depressed and so on and so forth. But they are lay persons. And after an evaluation, sometimes I arrive at that same decision that a lay person has been able to see. It's possible as a lay person, you can see someone and say, this guy looks like a thief. They're not a police officer, but you can make that determination because you have very good instincts, let alone someone who's in a position to always analyze people. So I embrace the idea that I'm a layman versus someone who's trained as a body language expert. So if I, as a layperson, can see that Mr. Cummings was uncomfortable, what do you think a body language person would see? Okay, so sometimes we have to accept these criticisms in good faith. Okay, and I'm not. My only concern is that whoever becomes president of Liberia create jobs for Liberians. If George Weah were creating jobs for Liberians, I would be the third panelist here with a party, CDC. But George Weah is not creating jobs for Liberians. So that is why I'm advocating against George Weah. Not because I hate him as a person. No, he's a good Liberian individual. And I saw him play once. And that one-time incident I saw on the football field is stuck with me years afterwards. Similarly, so you may have a lot of pictures on Facebook about Cummings. I've not seen them. But there are certain things that you see and they stick with you. And the thing that has stuck with me is that picture with Cummings in the hammock. The same thing what has stuck with me when it comes to Joseph Boyka was a picture of Boyka dedicating a hand pump. And I even commented when I saw, but it doesn't mean to say there are not other pictures about Joseph Boyka. So instead of all the time having these pushbacks, sometimes you need to be able to advise a candidate. Okay, no one is asking Mr. Cummings to not be authentic. Okay, but you have to understand that depending on what you choose to do, it requires adapting certain kinds of discipline, new principles, and the rest of it. It doesn't mean to say that you're fake. Okay, and lastly, I say before I leave, if these people really mean well for Liberia and Liberians, they need to come on a neutral show where people that will be asking questions are not afraid to ask them the hard questions because in the future they will not get job. So we are prepared here to ask Mr. Cummings a very hard question that other radio stations have been playing, Cummings and Charlene. We are prepared here to ask Boyka the hard question. Kun, the hard question. Did you? I don't know whether you were here when we met with Tion Gonglo. Go back and review that tape. We asked him the hard question. And one of those things I told Tion on this program was that his presentation was something of someone who wants to be a justice minister and our president. So go back to your people and tell them this is where they should come. If they want to make us as Liberians understand that they indeed have a purpose for their country that is better than what CDC is currently offering. Thank you.
Well, Mrs. Roberts, just before you give us a closing, we've reached out to Mr. Cummings and Councilor Bronskin, right? Am I right, Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Okay. So she'll let us know in a matter of days. Now you can go on with your closing, Ms. Roberts.
What's about Mr. Boyka? Did you reach out to him?
That's exactly what I was going to say. We're going to ask Pastor Ade to make candidate information available so that we can reach out to them as well. Because, I feel that Pastor Ade is doing a great job promoting them, and they probably need to pay for advertisement.
Exactly.
But
so you can't come here and promote Boyka all night. Come here and promote Cummings, and you can't even visit the cash out. Your support can't visit the cash out. Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Roberts. Go ahead and conclude so we can get out of here.
Guys, it's always a great opportunity to have this platform, to have this discourse on our country. And for me, it's not about party. It's more about a better Liberia. I'm sure it is for all of us. But, we want to be objective. We're not here to just promote any one candidate. So let's also say nay when the nay needs to be said, because that is how people learn. People have these platforms are here for these people that want to lead our country to hear from the people. So that's not just always just back them up, because like I said to you earlier, we have we call him, people call him the wise man, the old man, the statesman. But there are issues that are plaguing a very, very important issue where this religious bias that his people are preaching, which has the propensity to start a religious war or even a tribal war. So I want you to take it to Mr. Boyka people to address that issue, and as well as all of I think that is the key. Let's not just go on because this person has some kind of proximity to me, but who is the best candidate? Who has given you the word or given you options on what sounds good? If you didn't even see these candidates or know them and you heard their platform or saw the platform, what would come to you? What would come out that this person wants to do something for our country? Let's do that. Go out and get ready to vote, Liberians. Vote your conscience. Vote what's better for Liberia. Thank you.
Thank you, folks, that's all the time we have to be with you tonight. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place. Until then, please allow me to borrow the wordings of the wise man. Tough times don't last, tough people do. The height of a man is never known until he rises. This has been yours truly, Garcia Blue. Jensen by Yege.
So you're not let Coach Group play for her?
Folks, I'm
Coach
telling
Q.
you, until then, we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. We're out of time. Thank you, guys.
It is
Have
true.
a great
Coach
night.
Q.